Hey, Stormy's here. Put in Stormy. Hey,
Stormy's here.
Stormy!
Hey.
We are live, gentlemen. Good morning, good
Howdy.
afternoon, good evening, wherever the hell you are in the world, and welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. And I am on my phone because I've got children here that refuse to get off the internet, and it works better on my phone for some reason. I don't know why, but my sound will be crap. How are we all?
Good.
Doing well.
I'm good. I just got up.
Ah, excellent. Still in bed.
Half 5 in the evening, Stormy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, come on, man. What are you doing? Right. We're on today because we started let's call it a friendly conversation. On hey Shelley, how are you? Hey Popcorn Power, hey Laura, hey Jordanator, Kevin, welcome everybody. So we had a conversation that was very friendly, and at no point did I want to kill anybody during that conversation. Matthew, and
It's always
about-
me.
yeah, it was you about AI. So we were having a lovely conversation. Eric from the Babylon 5 Alliance, how are you, sir? So it was based on a story that Harris you'd put on.
Yes.
I can't remember the guy's name now, but it was a writer director, wasn't it?
Yeah, it correlated with Mission Impossible 7 having a bunch of AI in it, and then Steven Soderbergh, the director, producer, writer, that guy, he's done a bunch. We all love him.
Yep.
He was talking about how AI is much more of a tool than it is an actual scary thing to be replacing us people in the film industry. So we had a beautiful debate about it.
And me being a complete grown up, I might have gone, "No, you're a tool." But yeah, because I'm a grown up.
We had what you could call a mass debate.
It was like I say, and at no point did anybody threaten anybody else, so it was fine. But we thought we'd continue thinking because I challenged you to a duel, slapping duel. But I challenged you to come back with this. Can you actually name a movie, TV show, or whatever that could not be produced by an AI, something that was actually original?
That wasn't the homework.
Yes, it was.
The homework was, can you think of any ideas that were just totally original? Not that couldn't be recreated by an AI, because everything can be recreated by AI because it's literally feeding off our information.
No, you're right. My argument was that actually humans haven't created anything that's completely original for decades. So, and my argument was we shouldn't open the door on AI because if we do, evil executives that have big long moustaches and go "Mwah" all the time, will actually use it and save money, and a load of writers lose their jobs. Basically, that was my argument.
Why do you think I'm growing out this mustache?
Yeah, exactly. But your argument, correct me if I'm wrong, was basically that no, to be creative and to do something original, you've got to be a human being.
No, not necessarily to be original, but to be creative. And I think originality comes from creativity. I think it is entirely possible that ChatGPT could come up with something no one else has come up with, but I don't think it will have the creative spark that only comes from humans.
Yeah,
that's my entire argument.
Popcorn Power just had a really good comment. He said Scott Adams' argument against AI writers is that an AI cannot surprise you as it only rehashes what has been done before.
All right. Well, a little bit of an update I've got about the writers' strike. So I spoke to one of my pals, and he said, I said about 2 weeks ago they got very excited at the talent agency that the guy I speak to works at, and he said they thought it was about to be done. Apparently, there was a bit of a breakthrough that the studios and everything agreed. They basically matched the Directors Guild deal to say that no AI can be hired as a writer. So that has been agreed. An AI cannot be hired as a person, is actually the way they've worded it. But that basically works out that it can't be hired to write a script. So you cannot get a programmer to do you a script and then that script be used. You would need it to be a writer. Right?
Yeah.
But they thought that was it then, that they broke through that, but no, the writers came back with like we want more money, and that started the argument again. So But that's an interesting thing. Hopefully we're going to get something this week, because obviously the Actors Guild only had an extension, but only till the 12th, which, forgive me if I'm wrong, is Wednesday.
Yep.
So if SAG-AFTRA is going to go on strike, it'll be from Thursday. The only Stargate but the news I've really got this week is basically the same as what we've said, that they are still have open plans that they will announce Stargate at San Diego Comic-Con, unless the actors go on strike, in which case the chances are they won't. But anyway, but we've always said that's been the same for about 3 months. So we'll see what happens with that. So, projects, movies that are completely original from the last 2 decades, should we say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of these that I have are from the last 2 decades.
Go on then, Harris. Throw us one out.
You want to just throw you one out there just to get it going?
What's your favorite? And then let's see if we can tear it apart.
Oh, I might be saying the wrong director, but I'm pretty positive it's Richard Linklater. He might come up here a couple times, but Richard Linklater's Boyhood. Did you see Boyhood? The movie that took 12 years to film because it filmed an entire kid's journey into manhood. So it filmed his entire boyhood. He'd pick up maybe 1 month, maybe 2 months out of the year, and he'd film. Give him part of the script. He'd film. Get the whole cast. Patricia Arquette's in it. A couple other people in it. Ethan Hawke's in it, I believe. Great one. But yeah, an AI is not going to take 12 years to film.
I've not seen it, but it's fiction.
Yeah, they took 12 years to film it.
Why don't they just do a documentary?
He had a vision. He had a creative vision that an AI couldn't have. So
I would say the idea is original.
Yes. An AI could rehash it and do it again, but I don't see an AI coming up with, okay, let's film this over 10, 12 years, because they are mathematical and they want it to be efficient and they want it to be quick. You're more likely to get a 90-minute script every time than let's make it 2.5 hours and really explore a concept or idea.
So I'm just going to try and do
something.
something.
I could definitely rehash that and redo it, but I think that's the whole argument, isn't it? It took a human to have that idea to be then fed into ChatGPT, and then it might spit it out in the future again, but it would never have done it on its own.
Yes.
Yeah. But with the original idea, it could then do the scripts. So again, you could cut out the writing.
Potentially.
You
could do an outline.
Well,
I think there's a couple of examples of things that AI just could never come up with. You know, that the story is so disjointed, but it would take a human to sort it out how to do it properly. One good example of that's Pulp Fiction. Can you imagine if an AI tried to it's already disjointed, but it took human craftsmanship to make it understandable to humans. You know, all the AI work we've seen, it's all very linear. You know, I was playing around with ChatGPT this week. Write me a short story for whatever. And it's all every single time it's linear. So going back, to Boyhood, I mean, maybe because that's kind of a linear story, but Pulp Fiction, I just can't see that happening. Or something like Memento. Y'all remember Memento? That's another one that was.
Yeah, I would say that was it's been redone a million times since, but when it first came out, it was a very original idea, plot. And it was disjointed, but again, now it's been done once. You feed that into an AI, or if you ask an AI to do a Quentin Tarantino style script, it could do it.
It can try.
I did throw out the Quentin Tarantino, write me a short Quentin Tarantino story, and it was still linear. I mean, it was so fucked up, but it was
fiction is
linear.
Pulp Fiction is one of the ones I tossed down there, but Inglourious Bastards and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood are similar, where they're not they are a little more linear, and they might be able to come up with something like that. But that alternate history thing, I think it struggles with because it has to have a certain set of history or whatever to be plugged in for it to follow. And I don't know if it does a really good job at switching that up at times.
But and we would be talking about more advanced algorithms and more advanced program than what we're using, over of this thing, than what's available to, executives are going to have a more expensive version with more input, more algorithm, more data points,
It's
etc.
still going to output very linearly, though. It always
Yeah.
will.
And they're not going to.
Software. All it is software taking in an input. It's essentially the same as the input from your mouse. You're moving up and down. That's a binary input. Are you going up? You're going down? You're going left? You're going right? And everything in between. AI is very, very much the same at its core. It's just lots of little inputs which then determine an outcome. But I don't think it's ever going to be any different because it's software, it's programs which run line by line, code by code. It can't go outside of its programming. So if you had a function, so in programming you have functions, and these functions determine like what's going to happen next in the code. If you had in the function, if this, then that, okay, that program is never going to go, then this, if that. Like, it's never going to go in reverse. It can't, because it always has to go if this, then that. It can't change the way it thinks. It can't reprogram itself.
And
it
going
can reprogram itself. That's one of the points of AI. AI does reprogram itself.
It doesn't.
It has to be prompted to reprogram itself. It can
reprogram itself. That's a common misconception. It doesn't reprogram itself. The program does not reprogram itself. It just has more inputs that it can learn from. It's not.
And going on to Matt's point is AI. If it's coming up with random ideas, it still has to be the random seed has to be developed. And a random seed is always something that is appointed to something. Yeah, it can come up with it can randomize the random seed, but the randomizer is still itself seeded from something that is non-random. Like random seed could be the time of day, or the random seed could be, whatever your passcode is for your ATM. I mean, anything could be a random, or it could be an image. It could be an image. That's the random seed, but it has to be seeded.
Programming randomness is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Like everything that if you go onto Google now and you have a random number generator, it's not actually going to be random. It's going to be it's going to be a programmed generator. Yes, it's going to appear random, but it's never going to be truly random because it's programmed. Because it's following a set of instructions, and it may be a really complex algorithm. So the best example I can think of this is the Minecraft worlds. They have seeds. Those seeds are 64-bit integers which determine how that world is going to procedurally generate. Now that is a random seed, but really it isn't. It's just a hash function which is just pulling out specific arbitrary values and then putting them together. But it's not really random because it's pulling them from somewhere. It knows where to look. It's not just going.
Do you think humans can generate random?
Yeah.
We can't. You might understand the computer side of things better, but I understand the psychology things better. Humans don't generate random anything.
Well, I would say we can generate random, but we are similar to computers in that way where we can be, if like I went to the Magic Castle like a month ago, and one of their big things was like, we're going to make you say we're going to make this person say a sentence that we all know that they're going to say by the end of like the thing. And you can program someone's brain to do that, but once again, you have to prompt it. We don't need to be prompted to come up with those numbers. So I think we can come up with random numbers, but if we have any kind of numbers in front of us, we're going to be more likely to put that in front of us.
Yeah, but we don't know. If you ask somebody to come up with a set of random numbers, statistically speaking, more often people pick 3 and 7. There are certain things because at the end of the day, our brain works. It's far more complicated than current AI, because it's not really AI. We keep calling it AI, but it's not really.
Yeah.
But our brains work by categorization and by basically past experience. So we have a system the same as that, and we don't generate random. We don't generate randomness either. So, I mean, how is that different? Again, how is the computer system different? It's just maybe a little bit simpler, but every year it gets twice as complicated. So,
well, me and a neurologist friend of mine, we were discussing this issue kind of about identifying people, not like in a biometric point of view, but showing how everybody is. The original idea was showing everybody's on a spectrum. So you would ask the person questions like, "What's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite genre of music?"
Velocity of a sparrow. God, sorry.
Right. Well, so you start building up all of these things that people like, and then you also dislike. And after you get to that, like 10 or 20 questions down, you're in such a rarefied pie of humanity that it is very distinctive. Like nobody likes, there's very few people that is X amount of inches high, or likes peas, or also likes rap but a little bit of funkadelic, and it just, once you determine someone's personal likes and dislikes, it becomes very individualized, and it is almost like every person is their own random seed. But that doesn't change but it can over time. But it's not something that your like of peas or dislike of peas doesn't change every 30 nanoseconds.
Mm-hmm.
No, they reckon psychologically you have roughly a 7-year cycle where basic character, I forget the proper word for it, but our characters are built up of these basic character foundations that roughly can change every 7 years or so.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a bit more complicated now. But they just mentioned there the Blazing Saddles in the comments, that NAI couldn't come up with the end of Blazing Saddles. But the end of Blazing Saddles was written because they ran out of money. So they ran out of money, and the studio basically said, "You've got to be off the lot in 2 days." And they were like, "Oh, crap." So Mel Brooks, being the genius that he is, went, "We'll just do this random end, and it'll be funny, and we'll do that." But it was never supposed to be the end of the movie. It was forced on them.
But could a computer come up with that in that same amount of time, or would it need a certain amount of guidelines? Could it have that creative, original, and idea in that amount of time?
I would argue no. But I would argue an AI wouldn't need to.
I think a computer would have probably come up with an ending that fits the story, and it probably wouldn't have worked as well as.
It might have given you 2 or 3 to pick from.
Yeah.
I would argue, though, 100%, that I think the one area that AI 100% struggles now, would struggle now, and may never quite get, is comedy. Because I don't think comedy quite works to a set of rules. A lot of comedians will say, "Look, there's comic timing and this thing," and you can learn certain aspects of comedy. But when you see a comedian and he's about to go on tour, he doesn't write his tour to a set of sort of normal rules that he's learned over the years. What he'll do is he'll write a tour, and then he goes on a pre-tour where he does lots of little gigs. And I've seen this a couple of times, because we've got a theatre up by us, and it's quite a little theatre, and there's always, like, Lee Evans has done it, and I saw Michael McIntyre there. We saw Jason Manford not long ago, and they on these pre-tours, and all the way through he's like scrubbing things out. That didn't work, and this joke, but they make a joke out of the fact that they're like writing it there and then, and certain things don't work. And I mean, Jason Manford's been in the business 20 years, and he still cracks a joke, and it just doesn't work. So he just scratches it off. I'm not sure there are a set of rules, and I think AI would struggle. And I'm not sure it would ever. It might be able to do like a rom-com. It might be able to do things like that and sort of generic comedy, but I don't think it would ever replace a human being's instinct for comedy.
I would think the same thing for a horror movie or like a scary movie. I think it could do like the pop-up, like easy scares, but I don't think it could do like a psychological horror. I don't think it could bring Silence of the Lambs about any day of the week. I don't think it could bring the original Exorcist or something like that around. Even The Conjuring or Insidious. I think it'd be much more of a, if it was going to go that route, it'd be like The Woman in Black, where it's still spooky, but it's very much surface level spooky, and it's like, here's a pop-out horror, here's a pop-out scare, I think it would be much more mathematical in that sense, where it doesn't feel organic at all, where it's
because it's trying to write.
What is a ghost to a computer? What is a demon to a computer? You know, I don't know if they truly understand those concepts between what we give it.
What is anything to a computer, though? It needs to have it explained to it, doesn't it? What is anything to a computer? Nothing. It's nothing. It's a set of data points.
Mm-hmm. Which has to hurt its ability to create creatively.
That's how our brains work, though, as well. Our brains work we have sets of, we categorize things.
But we even though we're trying, we try to categorize it, which is part of our creativity so much, where a computer, if they can't categorize it, they'll toss it out in a recycle bin. We start thinking about, oh, okay, so if this isn't a ghost right here, could that be someone like playing a trick on somebody over here? Is it some weird machine, or is it an extraterrestrial? What our brain goes to 4, 5, 6, 7 different avenues, like a computer would, but I don't think an AI is. It has to be pre-programmed to even try to figure something like that out. You know, it's not going to do that.
One of the things computers have had problems.
Oh, the kids have taken back over.
Uh-oh. I thought
the kids have taken back over.
You're losing me.
We have no idea what you just said.
Oh, because I didn't see any difference on my side. Sorry, guys. So one of the problems that our computers had with identifying things was basically if you say, right, here's a box, and it's got windows and 4 wheels and an engine, and you say, right, that is a car. But then a lorry will go by and it'll go, car. No, that's a lorry because that's bigger and it's different and it pulls things. So it's a lorry. Oh, okay. And then you'll see somebody like a bicycle with one of those pulley things behind and go, oh, it's a lorry. No, it's a bicycle. And that's the problem with it. You have to have so many data points. So our brains cut corners on that, and we sort of like go, oh, that's a car. I know that's a car. And then a child will learn to categorize that. And those categorizations is why we make some psychological mistakes, where you see something at a distance and you think it's something, and then you realize, gets closer, and realize it's something completely different. Or there's lots. We actually learn a lot from our psychology of learning when the brain makes a mistake, why it makes a mistake, and it cuts corners a lot. Teaching computers to do that has been the trick, but we're getting quite good at it. So, first question I got for you: if we say AI is this good now, and it has its limitations, obviously, what do you think it will be capable of doing in 10 years?
I don't even think that's a real question, because how are we supposed to answer that? We just don't have to let it happen. Right?
You can base it on, because you can see what's AI done in the last 10 years. Where do you think it could? We're talking about writing scripts and basically faking human creativity. It couldn't do it at all 10 years ago. Where are we now? Where could it be in another 10?
So about a million years ago, when I was in college,
when everything was black and white.
Everything was black and white, right? Even the green screen monitors were in black and white. It was so long ago. So I wanted somebody to play D&D with all the time. So I came up with this thing. It was a dungeon generator, you know, and the little nugget that kept everything straight was the curiosity generator. You know, it really wasn't random scenarios. I mean, it was partially random, I should say, but it came up with these scenarios for me to go through. And it was like on an Apple II. It was really simple, but I called it the curiosity generator. And right now, and somebody from the chat will probably know what this is, but there's a branch of AI that is like that. And going on to Harris's point earlier, he was talking about, you know, computers will just throw things out into the trash. But we may be working through a problem and say, oh, this is kind of cool. You know, we'll write it on a Post-it note, or we may go down this whole path. And whatever this new branch of AI is, that's similar to the curiosity generator. You know, I think that is the branch of where networked creativity will go to. And I think it's, you know, it's all, again, a matter of bandwidth, I believe, you know, especially when quantum computing, God, it is insanely expensive. But if you look at where quantum computing could be in 10 years and then overlap that with the application of AI, Teradek AI, that would, I mean, I think we may get close to having AI as a creator of media, a very good creator of media that can kind of come up with stuff on its own. Now, there may be AI media creators that are specialized in westerns or sci-fi or vampire novels or whatever. But as I see it, it is just a matter of time, money, and technology for this to solve itself.
Matt? Don't agree, do you?
No, not really. I think at some point, I kind of agree. It probably will get to the point at some point where it will be what you would call an intelligence, that it would be able to do like some remarkable things. But at the moment, and even in the next 10 years, 20 years, I don't think that it's going to be a risk, because AI now isn't clever. AI now is a large language model, essentially, and all it is like 4 billion data points or 8 billion data points or 10 billion data points, whatever. Right. If it was given the task now to write software, it would do it really well, because software is programmatic. It's logic based. It's a set of rules that you cannot like get around. If it was to write, sorry, my headset just finished charging and it wouldn't stop beeping at me. If it was asked to write literature or something like that, I think it would struggle massively if it was to write something original, because it's very different than writing programs with a set of rules which are programmatic, and which essentially we've had these rules for programming since the inception of computers. It's literally moving bytes of data around. On the idea of it creating literature or creating scripts or creating anything that a human would normally do, it would struggle, because the way authors write and the way scriptwriters write, the language they use is very nuanced in a lot of ways. It's very the reason they choose particular words doesn't necessarily follow the rules that we were all taught in school for writing English. Sometimes they choose to say something completely different, but we as the reader can understand what it means. And we can draw and read between the lines and all things like that. But I don't think an AI would ever be able to do that, unless it was an actual intelligence and not just a program going off of the past.
So a real AI, it's a different story.
Real AI, yeah. If it was real artificial intelligence, if it was Skynet, for example, like that is actual intelligence. But the AI we're talking about isn't intelligence. It's just a really, really good algorithm. Really good algorithm.
Well, I looked up the Curiosity Generator, what the modern term for it is, and it is called generative AI. Generative AI creating synthetic media.
Mm-hmm. So that's the branch of AI that does image creation and, to an extent, music, I think.
Midjourney, Dolly, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I think the most interesting question I've ever heard about AI is, the first step is, the Turing test. How, having a AI that is indistinguishable, having a conversation with you that's indistinguishable from a human. But the thing that really terrifies me in terms of AI is, when do we have the first AI that purposely fails the Turing test?
See,
not to answer the question.
Right.
Because for me, that would be a signifier of intelligence more than anything else. Potentially, is when you have the ability to lie, almost.
Yeah,
because that's
self-aware and protection, isn't it? It's trying to protect itself. So
that implies that the AI has fear and is fearful for being shut down, or has an agenda, has plans beyond its programming, kind of thing.
And that's when you have to start playing tic-tac-toe with it immediately.
Well, okay.
Then ask if you want to play Battleship, and you what?
No, go on, Harris. What are you saying, man?
No, just with AI, all this thought process in general. I'm kind of with both with Matt and Stormy on here. I think I'm with Stormy in about 30 years instead of 10 years though, because even just the amount of quantum computing we have right now is nothing. We've got like maybe 10, 20, 30 quantum computers on this planet just because of.
I thought we only had 2. So
yeah, I was highballing it because I don't know the actual number. Like I'm just guesstimating, but and that's
even they aren't they arguing whether it's a real quantum computer or not?
Yeah,
one of
because
Google's is this, oh, is it quantum though? Is it?
They have to put it a certain level underwater to even have it operable because of how hot it goes. I don't think that's going to be commonplace in 10 years, and that's going to be a necessity for robots to be at the place where we consider them true AIs in 10 years. Or 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years, whatever it happens. I think the box has been opened. Pandora's box is open, so we will get there. But I don't think that I think we're fear-mongering ourselves a little bit by saying like 10 years from now, yes, the job, everything we know of as of right now will be looking very different, but it won't be different in a way that doesn't feel like humanity. You know, I don't think we're getting to the Terminator robots. I don't think we're getting to C-3PO. I don't think we're getting to iRobot and Isaac Asimov's Sonny either anytime soon. Sonny will be our true AI. But think about the rest of the robots in there. Those are what we would consider AI right now. To the degree that we consider AI now, I think we have many, many, many years of playing around with this before any true AI comes about. And if it does come about, it probably would be in that like central kind of thing. I don't remember what the character is in Asimov's book or iRobot the movie, but the central thing that they have to take out at the end, that Sonny's the only robot that's not part of it, kind of the mainframe.
Yeah.
I think hopefully if once we actually do get to all this, of course, I'm the Star Wars route, put it all in C-3PO and different things like that. Put it in individual things, so each individual robot has the choices to make instead of some big brain controlling tens of thousands of robots or 1,000 robots or 100 robots here or there.
Avoid Skynet if we can.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're talking about like originality there. Then we think that to actually do something truly original, an AI needs to be far more advanced than it is now. We think you can get there, but it actually needs to be real artificial intelligence. Fine. But I'm not really worried about that though, because I think there'll always need the writers, and when we do something really consistent, I obviously think about sci-fi. You get the really high concept science fiction movies, TV series. I think that requires an element that AI can't do because you need something, that original spark, that original whatever. 90% of TV and movies, though, I would say maybe isn't that original, and that is quite generic and formulaic. Right, that's the sort of thing I think the AI could pretty much do now. But let's say 5 years. Look, it basically wasn't a thing 5 years ago. We're where we are now. I think it'll be better in another 5 years, and I think maybe that's when we're at the risk. The only reason I'm bringing up this argument now is I think we need the rules now for writers so they don't start losing their jobs in 10 years. With this is why it's been so right. So can AI in say 5 years do 75% of the work writers do now?
No, this was part of a point earlier as well. We kind of trailed off into like or not trailed off, but we went into the conceptual aspects of AI versus, I guess, another thing you started out that last question with was, oh, good Lord, brain fart. Hello. Give me a second. I'll be back.
So while he's gathering his thoughts, let me just add that while he's gathering his thoughts, IBM announced last year that they have over 20 quantum computers. Just 20.
Oh, damn. That's more than I expected. So I was in the right range. Okay, but I did remember. So ChatGPT, just because that's the thing that we're thinking about probably that's writing scripts right now. You were saying the studios may have just such they can afford a much different version that's much better than what we have as a public, etc. I don't think that's true at all, because what they were maybe paying extra for 6 months ago is what ChatGPT 4 is now, and you can pay $10, $20 a month for it. I don't think we're that far behind, and as long as that's the case, and I don't think many studios, I don't think any of the big studios, I don't think Warner Brothers or Disney would go spend $100,000 on an AI right now. They don't have the type of money to do that. If they need to spend that type of money, they're putting it into a project somewhere or a marketing.
They wouldn't have the capacity or the know-how to even do it anyway. Like the actual time it takes to train an AI is insane. Like people think you can just put in some data and it will just go through 1,000 iterations within a second.
You'd have to hire a whole new department.
It takes months, if not years, to train.
So
that's why
I
we're on
don't think
ChatGPT 4
anywhere close
rather
to
than
that.
like 1 million.
So, do you genuinely think they wouldn't spend $10 million on a project to create an AI department if it means they could sack 75% of the writers?
But if you have to keep those 75% of writers for the next 8 years while you're programming it, yes, because they're spending way too much money on that.
They would do that though, because these are companies
But
that spend
that's
more
that's
on
where
CGI and whatever.
I think
they're always looking for the next big thing. Of course, they would spend that sort of money. It's nothing.
I don't think so, because there is ChatGPT 4 and opportunities like that where you can pay a little more to have that same type of thing on a more personal level. And I think they'd pay for the personal stuff over paying one giant blanket price. I think they'd be like, these are good writers. Let's give each of them access. Well, $20 a month, that's nothing. Give them that.
Yeah, but you kind of make. I actually think one of these things will be something like something that's open sourced in a way, or that lots of people use, because then can't the program, isn't that then adding more data points for free sort of thing? And the more input you have, the better the software eventually gets. So you would have something like that. But then Disney would pay the provider of that to have a version of that it then uses for these scripts and things. But that's the point? That if you're making like an action movie, you've got like 3 scenes, you've got your 3 parts of the action movie. You've got a hero, you've got a villain, you've got an anti-hero. It's not complicated. 90% of action movies are not complicated. All you have to do is show, I know this isn't quite how it works, but my stupid brain, all you have to do is show an AI a bunch of 80s action movies and then go, create me a movie like that, please. And that's it. And but it might not be able to do that, that really creative, Die Hard when it first came out action movie, but it can create all the other tropes. I mean, could you genuinely think it wouldn't write the Expendables?
No. Well, maybe. Okay, the Expendables, yes. The Expendables, yes. My brain went to Jackie Chan. Like, you could plug in 100 Jackie Chan movies and then say, hey, write me a fight sequence like that Jackie Chan, and they're never going to write you a fight sequence like Jackie Chan. Because it's reliant upon the actors on the day. He literally changes things that, like, on day, in camera, in set. AI cannot do that. They have to have the
fight things are massively choreographed, and I tell you that there are sets of rules for when you. Yeah. I mean, I've done a bit of training and things like that, and there are significant sets of rules for when you train for that. And I would say, of course, you could teach an AI to do that. Again, it would maybe struggling doing something then different. But there's so many movies out there with so many fights. I mean, in karate, for example, there's only about 70 moves, something like that. And then it's just variations of a theme, which an AI can do. You guys are basically arguing that's what AI does. It takes a set of rules and it can do variations of a theme.
Well, I'd like to bring up a couple points. I think there's a book that if you work for Pixar, I think there's a book that you have to read during your orientation, and I think it's called Story.
I've heard this. I think you might talk.
It's like the Bible of storytelling. There's another quote unquote Bible of storytelling. It was Poetics by not Archimedes.
Whoever that is, please turn it off.
Huh? Oh,
Whoever's beeping, please turn it off. That's really loud.
Let me just kill that out. So it was let's see, who wrote Poetics?
I know what you mean. There is a set of rules that, I mean, look at Kevin Feige.
Aristotle wrote Poetics, which is more or less the art of how to tell a story. Yeah. So there are these kind of rules or whatever, but I do think AI is really far behind. I put an OpenAI link in the chat, is like I asked the Chat GPT to write me a short story based on Tarantino's movies, and it is absolutely horrible. You know, the my favorite line in it is, quote, Quentin Tarantino's signature dialogue crackled through the air as the characters navigated through a maze of dark humor, violence, and unexpected twists. That's just, you know.
It's on the money.
It's on the money, right? Oh my
God. It's not far. And then all you need to do is say the C word and shoot somebody in the face. And that's a Quentin Tarantino movie. And that's the sort of thing I think Quentin Tarantino would put in a movie, to be honest, because he's quite self-deprecating. He pokes fun at his own work at times. So maybe. But I just think back to this point of like doing a generic movie series, whatever. I mean, if you tell AI, maybe not today, maybe in 5 years, but you tell one of these GPT-9, say, do me a vampire series that'll appeal to teenagers, and you telling me it won't do it.
No,
it might then need somebody to actually go through it and make sure it makes sense.
In 20 or 30 years, it's not going to know what appeals to teenagers. It's going to know what appealed to teenagers 30 years ago.
Anybody know what?
Then it's not being told what to do. I'm saying you tell it what to do. An executive says, "I want a vampire teen movie," and it'll just look at what's been done before.
But it won't understand what appeals to teenagers. That's what I mean. It's not going to understand.
Just show it Buffy.
No. You show it Buffy, and all it's going to see.
You think Buffy would do well if it came out today?
No, but you know what I mean. You show it past. You tell it that you pump a bunch of scripts into it and say, "This is the sort of thing I want."
Right, but it doesn't understand. This is what I mean. It doesn't understand what you're showing it.
It doesn't need to. It just needs to follow the set of rules you input into it.
If you're asking it to create something that's going to appeal to a certain demographic, of course it has to understand it. That's literally the point of a writer. It has to understand what the target audience wants to see or read about.
Okay, but isn't the understanding of what that is just based on a set of rules?
No, I think it's more nuanced than that. It's based on experience. It's based on emotion. Like it's not something you can program. Like,
but a 50-year-old executive or a 50-year-old writer knows what teenagers want.
Sometimes he might have a granddaughter or a kid, or he might have a goddaughter or a godson.
Yeah,
I think executives a lot of the time think they are telling you what you want. I think a lot of the time.
Oh, I mean that's part of it for sure. But that doesn't mean a human's not more applicable in figuring out what a human likes than a robot is.
See, I don't even know if we can ever have a computer of a sufficient level to even understand what any teenager wants. I mean,
I don't understand what my teenager wants, and I was a teenager 20 years ago. I've got no freaking. I've got 14-year-old kids here, and I genuinely think they're aliens. I think they've been kidnapped.
See?
So, I mean, I just don't think that's what. I just think that it seems to me that it'd be that's exactly what AI does: pump out generic, formulaic scripts. It's doing it now. They're not great, but it's doing it now. In 5 years, it might do it a lot better.
See, I don't think it will.
Need somebody to go through it and edit it and go, well, no, that makes sense. But you wouldn't need a writer to do that then, because the AI would do all the hard work, and then you basically just need a secretary to go through and make sure it makes sense.
Yes and no. No, in the sense it's not going to be able to do that. Yes, in the sense where you could train a specific AI to do that in somebody's specific voice, but it will never bring anything original. Still, you'd have to give it every Tarantino thing ever.
We're not talking about original anymore, though, are we? We agree that it would struggle to do anything original. What I'm saying is,
it would still struggle to come up with something original. I think it'd still struggle.
See, my problem with this, why I kind of just create all generic stuff. Like, we've been able to do that for the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a new thing to like. If they really wanted to do that, they would have done it.
I don't say they've started to do it.
I don't think I wouldn't say, because you're basically saying that they're going to do it for 90% of like the crap that comes out of Hollywood.
I'm saying they could, not that they would, but
they could. But I don't think. Of course they could. They could have done it 10 years ago. They could have done it yesterday. They could have done it any time within the last 20 years.
I win.
No, right. Because it's stupid. No, because they wouldn't, because it's stupid.
No,
because all it's going to do, because If you just say to a computer, right, I want it to have 3 acts and it's going to have this character and this character and this character, write me a script. Of course, it can probably do that. It's not going to be good though. It's not going to be worth putting money into, like, because it's going to. If they're pumping stuff out at a rate, like to get like script level like outputs, it's going to cost a lot, right? It's not going to be cheap. They're not going to be using the free version of ChatGPT that we're using. They're going to be investing money into it to get a decent output, but it's not going to give a decent output if you just give it generic, like, oh, just look at all the crap films that we've had the last 50 years and make something out of that. It's just going to make more crap, and it's not going to be worth the time because it can't create. It doesn't understand. It just looks at what it thinks is positive points and like detractor points, essentially.
Yeah. So are you basically saying that it could create a piece of artwork, but there's always that, and I would argue here that we're talking when something is actually good, and a lot of stuff on our screens isn't necessarily good. And what I'm trying to say is, I think executives could use AI, cut out the writers, and create an awful lot of stuff that's also not very good very quickly. And it would be cheaper, and they could pump out scripts much faster. And I think there is that possibility if executives and studios were allowed to do it. And luckily, it looks like they're not going to be allowed to do it. And that's the point.
If they did,
AI is only going to get better, though. It's not going to get worse, is it?
It's just going to have more data points to go from.
Which it'll get better. It'll get better at what it's doing as it learns more, and it has more data points. The more data, what happens when it gets 1 trillion data points or 2 trillion data points? You know,
I don't think that helps his creativity.
My rebuttal to the
that's true.
Why wouldn't they want
absolutely
to?
True. It won't get
data points almost negate creativity because it's trying to throw data points in there instead of being fun with and interesting with what they already have. You don't necessarily need an extra 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trillion data points. You really only need 30 or 40. And then if you are creative enough, you can make that 30 or 40 into a good story. AI is never going to do that.
It's like, if you have a meeting, the more participants in a meeting, the less you get done.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that meeting is going to be
less
productive.
Quality you have with the work product.
Well, my rebuttal to why wouldn't they just do this, because they can then pump out loads of this content. Yeah, of course they absolutely could, but the quality of the work they put out is going to suffer, which is just going to dig them a grave, because we've already seen it over the last, how long's YouTube been out? Like 15 years. Like, the quality of stuff that comes out from the big studios is now being rivaled by smaller creators who now, being like powered by ChatGPT essentially and all these AI tools, can create like amazing content. Yeah, big studios are probably going to use it for the wrong reason, but the small people who want to get a leg up in the creative world and use it as a tool will go to the top.
So is that the future then? Actually using something like this to let you get maybe a lot of the grunt work done of creating a script quickly, but then a writer still needed to actually make it interesting, make it good, make it. So it's sort of like how when we went from typewriters to word processors to, this is sort of like that next iteration of the word processor starts doing a bit more of the work for you.
Yeah. Yep. Writers are inherently just creative people. This is a tool for creativity. They may not be necessarily there, pen and paper or keyboard and mouse, typing out scripts in the future, but they're still going to be creating using ChatGPT as a tool, as one of their many tools in their arsenal. That's how I see it's going to be. It's going to the creator economy is going to like lift itself massively because of tools like this. There's going to be way more tools coming out. ChatGPT is not the be all end all of artificial intelligence. It's not even like, especially when you've got like DALL-E 2, Midjourney, like they're all right at the moment, but they're going to get better because the more images it gets fed. And the thing I think where it's really going to shine is where they pull it into software. So the AI will learn how you use the software to make your experience better. So instead of having shortcuts, like you might have Control K to like slice a clip in After Effects or whatever it is. Like it will know when you're potentially going to slice a clip, and it will just learn from you. I think that's how AI is going to help creatives. But yeah, I mean,
My
what
only
do you
real
think? What do you think
experience-
about what I said about like the writers thing, though? Because I think that's an interesting point.
What was the point? Sorry, I forgot. I glazed over at one point.
It's that AI is not necessarily going to like individuals can still are necessary and like the other day, kind of. Is that what you were saying? Kind of like how we were talking about how like we could have a whole another generation of George Lucases now because of AI versus instead of it'd be death by committee instead of that, because that's what writers' rooms tend to be.
I don't think it will be because of AI. I don't think AI is going to do all the work. All I'm saying is AI is going to be a tool which makes creativity easier.
Yes.
Which then gives people who are not necessarily. So the example I gave was YouTube. But back in the day, when I started YouTube in 2008, 2009, like just using crappy cameras in my bedroom, right? Now we have all this technology where we can literally live stream to however many thousands of people we want, because of people who started out back then. The creator economy rose up. I think AI tools are going to help the creator economy rise up even more, and it's just going to be a tool. It's not going to be something that replaces creativity. It's going to aid creativity. That's my overall point.
It's the great equalizer in a lot of ways. I mean, Hollywood's been at the head of its game. You know, Hollywood is big man in charge on campus over here all the time. Hey, now Bollywood, Tollywood, those filmmakers in Nigeria, those kids that are all a big group of kids, they have the exact same tools and references that Hollywood has now. So it's kind of the great equalizer in that sense, where anybody anywhere can make anything, and it doesn't need to be some fancy high-paid script writing room in Hollywood where it's all these people. And I'm probably poo-pooing a little bit too much, because I do want to be in these big old high-paid Hollywood writers' rooms one day. But at the same time, I'd much prefer a populace of creatives that are able to. They might not get a big old movie made, but they can make a little YouTube series. And if AI is good at animating for you down the road, and you can give it a certain style, give it certain whatever, you can do that and even hire an animator, because it's a lot cheaper, because you already have all that animation done to work around the edges, to make it really tweak into the things you want it to be. And everything's a lot cheaper in that sense, where you have legwork done for you versus but before you get to the creative aspects of it. You know, you can use it as a tool anywhere. It's everything everywhere all at once for us little folk.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. I can see the point in that. Do you think that then, if this deal is right, and we've already got the deal with the directors, that AI can't be used as a person, and this is as a general way of sort of policing this in the future, that because we don't know how good GPT-10 will be. You can't sit there and tell me that GPT-10 won't be able to write a hit movie. It can do it now. But it can't, because Hollywood will agree these certain rules. Is that enough?
Well, you know, I don't care how crappy the film would be, that for GPT-10, Netflix will buy at least one season of it.
They're probably become a massive blockbuster. I don't think any of these films have to be.
And then it's just right. Oh my god!
You know what? When was the last time we had a movie that was very creative, that won the Best Picture Oscar, that was then actually sort of commercially popular?
Okay, well, that's one of my examples I have written down right here.
Avatar.
Jordan Peele's Get Out.
Oh, you mean? Oh, yeah. You did,
yep.
Best Picture, you said, not just an Oscar, right?
It's one of the first times a horror movies. I think it's the first time a horror movie won Best Picture since Silence of the Lambs, and that was 2017.
How commercially popular was that?
Very. I can look up.
It would have made money because it didn't cost much to make. So I mean, from that perspective,
It made $255.4 million on a $4.5 million budget.
So, but it made
I'd say it was
$250
commercially
million.
successful.
I would argue that's a decent hit and very good for the studio. But I mean, Indiana Jones, which is considered a massive flop, is going to make that.
Well, because it's
I
only
know
a
it
flop
depends how
because
much money you spent on it. How many people actually went out of their way to watch it? Is my point.
that's a lot. I mean, it's a horror movie as well. It's Indiana Jones is one of the greatest, and it's a very original thing from a first-time director who people are very hesitant to go see because it's a horror movie versus Key and Peele that we're all used to, which people didn't just go rush to the theaters because of that. About 2 weeks after is when they started going to the theaters, and that's a huge hit. And that's a very big hit, very very big hit.
I would say that's a commercial success because of how much money it cost to make. I don't think that's maybe the same as saying it was a blockbuster.
Oh no, that is a definite blockbuster for the horror friend for a horror anything. That is a blockbuster for a horror
for the genre. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 1,000%. There's no doubt about that one.
So that is the. Would you agree then that at least normally the movie that wins Best Picture, not every year, because I mean I think actually didn't a couple of the Lord of the Rings win Best Picture, but generally speaking, the creative movie that critics love that wins Best Picture at the Oscars generally isn't commercially hugely successful.
Did Titanic win Best Picture?
I
think it might have done.
believe.
It definitely won about 15 Oscars, but yeah.
I think if Lord of the Rings won any Oscars, I mean, in terms of Best Picture, it would have been Return of the King, or maybe that was just Jackson's Oscar.
But I think generally speaking, if I hear a movie wins Best Oscar, I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to watch it then because that's going to be boring. Generally speaking.
Yeah, they're I think you're right because basically it's these surprise movies that no one ever, what was one I think that was The Life of Pi? Everybody just fell over head over heels, and I watched it. I was rooting for the tiger.
Yeah, I was really hoping the tiger was just going to
eat on that fucker, but it just didn't happen.
That's right. It would smack the characters into the ocean and they drown, and that would be the end of the film. It was awful. It was confused. It was very creative, very original, and AI would have no chance. And it was shit. It was just boring.
I sat next to the lady that was the mom in Life of Pi one day. Me and one of my friends from my hometown came to visit LA, and I was like, okay, we'll go to Melrose, and we'll go to like some of the cool little like touristy spots and hang out. We went to this one little lunch place, a little sandwich place on Melrose. We sat down. I just hear the voice. I'm sitting right next to I think her name is like Parmander Nagra or something like that. Was just sitting. I just kind of like froze and was like, oh shit. That sounds about right. And then right after we were sitting next to her and her husband, Kumail Nanjiani comes and sits down next to my friend. So I've had lunch about 3 feet away from Kumail Nanjiani. I don't think we spoke more than like 20 words that entire time. We were just like, just eat your food. Just don't make eye contact. It was good.
Let me ask this then. And then would it be fair to say, and I can almost hear Matthew getting annoyed immediately, but would AI be good at making summer blockbusters?
No.
Movies that just entertain, you just throw popcorn in your face, and that actually make crap loads of money for the studios?
No, because it doesn't understand what it's doing.
It wouldn't be creative.
You need to understand.
Of course it does.
No, it doesn't.
That's my
It needs to
entire
follow
argument.
the set of rules that the
To
executives
make something
tell it.
creative, you need to understand the creative process. You need to understand
You,
what the audience
you
wants.
just asked for
No,
instead
no.
of all of Marvel Phase 1, 2, 3, you just asked for only Marvel Phase 4. That's what you just asked for, and that was not successful. I don't think people are going to go out and see that either. We don't like that formula.
I would argue that Marvel Phase 1 and 2 were way more formulaic, and it's when they tried to be more creative and tried to do something a bit different that we got Phase 4.
No, we got Phase 3, which was the most successful like phase of any film thing ever. And then we got
they
phase
tried to
4.
be more creative, and we got fucking phase 4.
They didn't try to be more creative. They just put it out on the lower people. Kevin Feige was like, okay, you kind of know the formula. You know the formula.
Oh,
you know the
come
formula.
on.
Take
When we
these.
start getting into the multiverse of madness, and they started trying to do different types of movie, they
That
started doing like horror
wasn't
movies and all
sticking to the
sorts.
same formula. That was making it simpler and handing it off to other people. That wasn't Kevin Feige doing that anymore. That was, hey, you know how this works. You know how this works. Try it out. And that's why we don't like it all that much. Even if that's the thing, if you're still going super strictly formulaic, you need a creative head at that base somewhere. You either need the foundation to be creative, or you need the head to be foundation, or the head to be creative. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work without an actual creative
I'm sorry. If
conduit
you give
somewhere.
an AI a bunch of Iron Man comics and say, I want to do an Iron Man movie, are you telling me it could not have written the first Iron Man movie based on a certain lot of formulas to say we want 3 things? We want at one point it looks like the hero's got to be about to lose, and then he's got to be heroic. And you give it a bunch of rules to run by. Because I tell you what, the only real example of this I've got is I've listened to the Stargate scripts that were written by AI for the companion website, and they basically threw in a bunch of Stargate episodes and told us to create a Stargate episode, and it created a perfectly good Stargate episode, and it did it twice.
Okay, well, I'm don't get mad at me, everybody, but I love Stargate, but the writing is not the strong suit of Stargate. The writing actually,
point.
Well, it is, because if you have a better writer, a better TV show, it's not going to come up with a Game of Thrones episode. It's not going to come up with a House of the Dragon episode. Stargate, as much as I effing love it, the acting is what makes it that good. The writing is not that good. The concepts are there.
Dragons. Oh my!
The concepts are there.
In his grave as we speak.
I'm sorry, I love you all, but like all of the Stargate people everywhere. But the writing is the definition of formulaic. That's why it was so easy to do that.
Popular. And you could not hire writers and get AI to do it. And okay, the writing might not be very good, but it'll be popular.
But then again, I don't think that survives today's climate of television. It just does. I as much as I would enjoy that 22 episode.
Got better? You genuinely think writing has got better in the last 10 years?
Let's say they
did. The landscape's changed.
They did this, and they're like, "Yep, let's do it." Right? They're then going to feed the data points back into it and say, "Yep, that was great. You did a really good job, AI. Well done." Right? What's going to happen again? They're going to do the same movie again. The same movie again. And then you're going to go, no.
That's what we've been doing for the last 20 years.
No. It will be literally the same movie again.
No, it wouldn't.
And then you go, no. I didn't want
AI
the
is
same movie
one
again.
of the things AI is good at is reformat and making it look a bit different, because it can just do different iterations of the same thing. And when you break it down, it'll be the same thing, but it won't look. But most blockbuster movies are very formulaic. They run to a set of rules.
Is this a good time for me to bring up? Is this a good time for me to bring up Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3?
If you'd like.
Because, I mean, talking about formulaic, it was layers of formula.
Let's give up.
That surrendered.
Yeah.
But, I mean, don't you think, like, Volume 3 was just layers upon layers of formulaic dialogue and plots and...
Yeah.
And, exposition loopholes. I mean, it was doing the
Lord's work. Thank you.
Bless
Thank
you,
you.
Bless you. But I mean, so I saw Volume 3. I guess it was a couple nights ago, or whatever, and it was just like, oh, wait a minute, this is part of this movie. This is part of this movie, and they've kind of stitched all this together, And finally, we get Rocky Raccoon. I mean, to me, it was just like. It was not seeded by anybody. It was much like Matt was saying, once if you take all the Iron Man comics and you stir them into an AI pot, you're going to get Iron Man out. It's just like it was it was just trope filled, I thought. And I know you guys have discussed Volume 3 before. What's your feelings on that concerning trope and layers and layers of just formulaic?
I love the movie, but it was very much. before you go in, you pretty much knew what that film was going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it was the third in the series, it was the final one, so it was going to have a certain tone that you expected. There was nothing in that film that surprised me. I loved it, but there was nothing in the film that surprised me. Maybe the ending. The ending was a little surprising. I have to admit, the way they redid the ending, basically, but they did it in a way because they're getting ready for the sequels, and that's not surprising. So
most surprising was the lack of deaths, I guess. But
because
also,
they were ready for the spin-offs. Yeah.
That just made my it made my brain tick right there. But I guess that kind of brings what we were just saying about Phase 4 versus Phase 1 and 2 there a second ago. Guardians of the Galaxy feels much more like a Phase 1 or 2 film in their formula, which made it a breath of fresh air for what we've gotten recently within Marvel. So whenever it's like semi-formula with because it is very formulaic, of course, but that's kind of like the difference, I guess, where the Phase 4 feels like it could have been written by an AI because it's just there. It doesn't feel genuine. You can tell all of it was filmed during or a good chunk of it was filmed during the pandemic, and they had to rearrange schedules. So, okay, this plot line taken out here, we'll shoehorn a little tiny one here. Boom, 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 boom. All these little different kind of things versus something that feels like Phase 1 or Phase 2 that might not be like truly special in a lot of ways, but it feels a lot more special just because of the way it was made versus just spiderwebbing.
Here's a question for you then. How long do you think it'll be, if ever, you can say never, until we will have a cinematic release summer blockbuster that is completely written by AI?
I mean, you could do it next year if you wanted to.
I think someone will try to do it.
Yeah,
but
I don't
think it would be popular. Maybe it will because it will be the first AI generated film, and it will be popular because it's I don't
different.
know different.
And they'll advertise it like crazy as
people want to see what it's like.
Yeah, and right?
And that will spawn other people to maybe do it, but they won't be. The fad will dry out essentially. It's not going to be something that people do consistently because it's just going to be generating the same sort of things over and over again, very formulaic, very blah blah blah, whatever. We as audiences are going to notice, and we're going to be really annoyed by that. Which the studios, if they have any sense, which I'm hoping they do, because they want to make money, they must have some sense, Jay. They want to make money.
Yeah, that's the point. They want to make money.
Yeah. So they'll then use AI as a tool rather than to do it all for them.
So, okay, the question I think you want to ask, Jay, is not like when that film's going to happen, because like you could say a film, the first film that makes $100 million, or the first film that makes $1 billion from strictly AI, but there's still going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12, 20, 30, 40, dozens and dozens and dozens of names behind that.
Yeah,
I think the question
then have a director and all this sort of thing. But I would argue that the script is just the first step. AI is capable of doing a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I can see because AI is such a big thing now. It's a big talking point. It wouldn't surprise me if there was someone out there now fully developing a movie. So they do the script, they do the voiceover, they do the animation / deep fake / whatever they want to do. It wouldn't surprise me if someone was doing that. And I think it would be quite popular because it's new and it's like, let's see how the AI performs.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not sustainable. It's not something that they're going to do forever.
I really think that the only time that we actually need to worry is if all these different names are still in the credits, we're okay. But if you see one producer's name and the AI has done everything else, and maybe one producer and like a director, or even if that producer is the director as well, then we should worry. But as long as there's more than one name in that credit list, I think we're all right.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't there a movie several years ago that was partially produced or written or something by an AI, or wasn't it like
have to Google it.
short film maybe?
Yeah, I could see a short film.
Mm.
I don't think it was a cinematic release. I think we'd know.
Oh, so I was just going to say earlier that I think it would be very easy to get a blockbuster, a profitable one off of AI quite easily, because I mean that's just a function of marketing, not necessarily one of talent. I mean, there's been a lot of blockbuster movies that absolutely sucked, and it was just because they had very clever marketing. So maybe the issue is not necessarily the movie itself, is when will we have a movie where the marketing is AI created? Maybe that's where we really need to go.
And I would argue that AI would be amazing at that, because again, it rules. There's a very simple set of rules that they run marketing to get people interested, and that would be very easy. Like I say, I'm hoping that thanks to these scripts, Hollywood aren't going to go this way, because they're putting these rules. I say that AI cannot be a person, but it could be used to generate. I mean, if I was an animator, I think I'd be quite worried about AI, because I think an AI will quite quickly do an awful lot of animation work, and it will take a lot. And if I was an animator living in Hollywood, I'd be grateful I still had a job, because they all moved to India anyway. But I think it's going to put animators out of business. Out of work, I should say. I think writers have got a bit safer. I mean, we have to be honest. We don't actually know what AI is going to be like in 10 years. We don't. But that looks like the way it's going. That if you give it a story and tell it, I want to animate this, this, and this, that actually it can do a lot of the heavy lifting. Do you know what I mean? You'd still have to have somebody come in and designing characters and things. But if somebody designed a character and they go, right, the AI, that's the character, it can do a lot of the work.
It would do a lot for post-production. I don't think it would do a lot for the actual creation. So people who actually do the preliminary animation, obviously they're going to be doing most of the legwork. If they then decided that they wanted, as an example, change his shirt, then they could whack it into an AI algorithm and say, just change the shirt to this. I think it would work well for that. Yeah, it would work well for that, but I don't think it would work well for actually creating an entire consistent like what's the word I'm looking for, how shows have a certain look and feel. Like you can instantly tell the Simpsons
same themes.
You can tell the Simpsons by the way it's animated. You can tell Futurama by the way it is Rick and Morty as well. It's very certain themes and very certain style that AI, it will always be slightly different with each frame, and it would look very disjointed, I think.
So if it's animating it to a set of rules, and again, it would be AI working with animation software that already exists. So if you create a character and say, tell that right, this is the character, I want it to do this storyline. Mm-hmm. Why couldn't an AI do that? And again, you would tell it the style, you would tell it the thing, and you would. I mean, I think there'd have to be somewhere creative, doing certain elements of it to get, the feel, like you said, the tone and the feel right. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that the AI would do all of the work. What I'm saying is the AI could do a lot of the heavy lifting, which instead of having 10 animators, you could have one animator. Or two.
I think it would do well in a post-production sense, where you needed to touch things up, or you needed to replace certain things, or add something into it, but not the main animating part, like the storyboard. Maybe the storyboarding stage, it could probably do that. But like the actual animating and the animated rigging and stuff, and like actually like getting the characters to move in the way that they actually want them to move, like very nuanced movements, rather than we want him to walk across the road, because the way an artificial intelligence or whatever is going to determine how he's going to walk is based on how it's seen other things walking, but it might not be the right walk for that scene.
Yeah, you'd have to have somebody come in and fine tune it and get that.
It's going to generate, and you might go through 50, 60 variations where you could have just had an artist just do it.
But I would argue that's like animation now. Like how we got animation, say the Ronald, the Zemeckis, the Northern Northern Express movie a few years ago where Tom Hanks played everybody.
Polar
And
Express.
the Polar Express, sorry. And the CGI was excellent most of the time, but the mouth, they couldn't quite get the mouth right. And at times it was creepy as hell. And I think that's what, if you had AI CGI, that's kind of what it would be like a bit. It would come out like that, but then you'd have to have somebody go over it just to take out the bits that aren't quite right. In the similar sense that if you sort of do a painting and it's perfect, it doesn't, and perfectly symmetrical, it looks weird because our faces aren't symmetrical and we're designed to be able to sort of tell, those like subtle differences. So you'd have to do that as you'd almost have to edit a human being to go and dirty it up a little bit.
But that's way more work. It's a lot
Yeah.
harder to do that stuff post than it is when you're doing it, because think about it, all these things have got layers, layers added onto it, and then the AI thinks, oh, this is done, so it renders it out as a final image with all these layers already like put on top of it. It's not going to like give you a I don't know what animation software exists, After Effects file, for example. It's going to give you an MP4. Going and then editing that MP4 is going to be a lot more work because you have to take out the bit you want, recreate the layers and the effects that make it like blend in properly, and then do that for every single frame. It's just way more work.
I don't think you would though, because again, you'd be working with the AI to do it. So what you would do instead, you would change the parameters of what the AI has done.
But if the AI
And
couldn't
you'd
have
say,
done it in the
"Okay,
first place,
I want you to
why would you
change
trust
this."
it to do?
Because you would tell it what you want to change. That's the point. And an AI, well, like you said, it's just a piece of software. It's just working to a set of rules. You just adjust the rules, and then it would reanimate it. It would regenerate it for you.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I mean, it would. But I think you would end up going through 50, 60 variations or however many it takes for you to say, yep, that's perfect. But the amount of time that would have taken, you might as well have just had an animator do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd almost look at it in the same way we looked at writers. We're like, yes, it could be. We're right now. It's the same thing. You have a writer's room, you have an animating room, and it's not death by committee with the animators because it takes that many people to put that much focus into making something that looked that good. But with the lessening of that, and you can do it with half the amount of people, I don't necessarily think that means half the amount of people are getting paid. I think that means that's twice as many people making creative individual art or creative art for their own projects or whatever they want to do versus just a whole studio having to hire 30, 40, 50, 60 people or something like that. Where instead, if it's an animation house and that company has 30, 40, 50, 60 employees, they could be on 40 different projects at that time instead of 2. I think that opens up everybody's availability and opportunity that much more. I think AI is the great equalizer in a lot of ways. Same thing it is with writing. I think, of course, as humans, we put our own fears on kind of things. We tend to fearmonger things. Look at our news. Every bit of our neuse is fear-mongering, warmongering, hell-mongering, and that's where our brains go to. We're survivalists. We're 150-pound bags of water and flesh meant to adapt to anything to survive is kind of the way people are, you know?
And
15 pounds.
I'm just saying a general thing. I weigh more than that right now.
There's a distinct lack of bacon mongering throughout the media, I think.
Oh, I had 2 pounds of bacon yesterday, so I might be on the bacon mongering. So, oops.
Is it fair to say that this is exactly the same argument that we would have had if we did this 30 years ago when CGI was coming in and computer generated things were coming in, or
this would be that same argument we have 10 more
same
years.
argument?
I was going to say this earlier. It's like we would have had the same argument when computers first came in. Whenever there's a new technology, people get scared because they think it's going to replace them. And maybe it will replace some people, but it's going to also create so many more opportunities for other people. So what's the problem?
But when you have a technology, the more powerful a technology, is it also true though that the more risk a technology comes with?
Not
like
necessarily.
Nuclear power is awesome, but it is risky. Genetic engineering will give us could eliminate disease.
It could grow my hair back.
There's a dark side to it. It could grow hair, damn it! But there's a dark side to it.
Is it going to grow mine?
No, that's not happening. We're talking about genetic engineering, mate, not miracles. I mine do, but that's my point though. The bigger the advantage to a new technology, the bigger the risk. Computers themselves, there's huge advantages, but there are big risks, with like losing your data, over reliance, etc. So, and the only thing I would argue is we do have to be careful. We do have to learn from our own past experiences, and when we have a technology that's as capable as AI, proper AI as well, could become, we do have to think ahead, and we do have to put in precautions, and we do have to. I mean, Elon Musk says AI is potentially the biggest risk we face today. It's more dangerous than nuclear war, potentially.
It is, but I don't think it is for the reasons he thinks it is. I think it's because of our over-reliance on machines.
Anything.
I think we as a society are kind of dumbing down because we're not doing things ourselves. Like even me now, like when I go downstairs and I make dinner, I'm going to say, "Hey Alexa, set a timer." I'm not going to look at my watch or my phone or anything like that. Like that's a very simple thing, but like we rely on these virtual assistants and these tools to do quite a lot, and that is a risk. But I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's like.
Sorry, Harry.
Going back to something that Jay was talking about is would we've had this discussion with CGI. I remember when Star Wars came out, it used a lot of set designers were complaining about matte paintings. They'd have no MATTE matte paintings like Matte World back in the day.
Yeah.
Because Lucas used
Shut up, matte paintings.
Yes,
shut up,
the set designers complained a lot about matte paintings being used in Star Wars and how it triggered a lot of matte paintings. And then there was this company called Matte World that hey, let's do it for everybody. And then you see lots of matte paintings in Indiana Jones movies and so forth. Then you had a lot of the matte painters started complaining when they just did it digitally, in Photoshop, and then just created the image and then pasted it over, and there's no actual real painting. So then the matte painters started complaining about the CGI, and now we don't use matte paintings anymore or anything like that because we always keep the camera moving.
I think people just like complaining.
Well, they do, and that goes back to Harris's thing. Is just like all of our media is hate and fear.
Yeah, sex and death. That's what sells. Sex and death. If you can
like
scare
reggae
them
music
that children might die, you're on a winner. Go on. Sorry, Harris.
Oh no, I was just joking. I said I like my reggae music too much. I'm an optimistic bastard.
Well, guys, I think I won that argument. I don't know what you guys think, but I'm pretty sure.
I don't think we ever. I still have about 15 films that I could go through that.
Throw us a couple quickly. And I'll tell you if I think they're derivative and what they're based on.
Just because we've already been over the Tarantino, Inglourious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Pulp Fiction. If we're going Chris Nolan, Inception, Memento, Prestige, Tenet. If we're going Get Out's there, 2001: A Space Odyssey. If we're going Richard Linklater again, not just Boyhood. Have you seen A Scanner Darkly?
Oh my God, A Scanner Darkly. Yes.
No computer. It feels like a computer came up with it, but no computer would ever come up with it. Also, First Cow, Kelly Reichardt's film that we talked about like last week. It was just the slow burn example. That's the thing that we keep talking about slow burns for. That movie is completely and wholly original, with it being also like it seemingly wouldn't be, but it is, which is great. But then the one that comes to mind is like, besides all of A24's library, I could say The Lighthouse, I could say The Green Knight, I could say a whole bunch of things. The Green Knight less so because it is a book, but Donnie Darko. No AI is coming up with Donnie Darko any day of the week. I rest my case.
No. All of those films, though, are based on.
See, the AI agrees.
No, don't get me wrong. It's how small you want to go and how basics you want to go. But every single one of those films will either be based on a love story, a revenge story, a redemption story. I can't remember what the other two are, sorry. But there are basically 5 or 6 basic plot mechanisms that every single movie, story, anything ever written is based on.
Is that plot mechanisms, or are those just truly human emotions that plot mechanisms can be played into?
Story, basic plots, basic whatever words you want to call it. Like a redemption story is basically every spaghetti western ever made. You could argue that Star Wars in some else is a redemption story.
Oh yeah,
and then
it's
love
the
story.
Definition of a hero's journey.
They're a hero's journey then as well. But I would say that the hero's journey in lots of elements is about redeeming themselves. But anyway, the point is that there are only about 6 stories ever been told, and every other story ever since is a variation of those themes, those 6 basic themes, and nothing. If you think of it like that, nothing is original. I would argue, though, that what you then do with those 6 stories is what you then have, whether you think something's original or not, how you treat it, what you do with it, a perspective on things, etc. And if you take a different perspective on something, you can argue that The Matrix, on a basic level, is a love story and a hero journey. But the way they did it, we'd never seen anything like it before. So is that original? On a basic level, no, but on several other levels, it is. So it's that's an argument you can't win if I'm going to be a dick about it, is my point.
Well, humans like to oversimplify things. That's why we're inherently lazy in a lot of ways, and that's why a lot of our fears with AI is oh, how can it take over this task for us? How can it take over this task for us? How can it do this job for us? Is because we want to be lazy. We're inherently trying to find the easiest solution for something, and I think we can.
It's sometimes the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, and not with film, because you can just base it off of emotions and the way humans react to things. And yeah, there are the 6 different types of stories, but that's just boiled down to human emotion. That's just understanding people and a certain level, and a psychological level. I don't think that's more so because yes, anything can have 6 archetypes around their story, but Silence of the Lambs is not that similar to Get Out, and its archetypes are very similar there. I think that that's just it's not a gross oversimplification, but it is an oversimplification nonetheless that I think we as human beings tend to just try to do too often. There's a lot more than 6 stories out there. It's just if you really want to boil it and make it down into that, you could do that. But there's a lot more.
Like I say, it's an argument you can't win if somebody's going to be a bit of a dick about it.
Yeah,
it's just a love story, but it's more complicated than that. We can all agree it's way more complicated than that.
Yeah.
But do you actually genuinely believe an AI or a computer can't simulate or actually have emotions? Emotions are basically just a reaction to physical stimulus, chemical reaction in the brain, and past experiences.
Can you imagine if Clippy turned out to be an AI? How much it would have ruined everything?
Yeah.
I hated Clippy. Clippy had all my disdain, all my anger, all my frustration. was funneled into fucking Clippy. Would you like help today? No, goddammit, I don't want any help. Get the fuck away from me. But this AI had been 10 times as worse.
I just think as human beings, I think sometimes we think we're special and that we have a soul or something, and that there's something that's unique about the way we think or something, and we're not. We have an organism. And they used to do stimulus response in psychology. So they do, in theory, if you had a stimulus, you should always get the same response. But then they realized there's an organism in between. So now they say stimulus organism response. And that's how we then understand response. But most human behavior is completely understandable and predictable, because we're not that complicated.
Well,
the brain is just a very sophisticated system. It's just more complicated.
for lack of a better example, my Texan will show whenever you're hunting and you're going after a deer or something like that. If you don't hit it right, if it's not dropping and you need to go in the brush and follow it just for a little bit, 90% of the time that deer is going to take the easiest path. So you know which path it's going to take, whether you're actually tracking, like if it's losing blood or anything. You're following the most likely scenario. And people, unlike robots, are maybe a little more than 150 pounds, but we're 150 plus pounds of adaptable bags of water and flesh. That's literally what we are. And I don't think a robot is going to adapt in those same ways.
When you're in a fight or you're hunting people, they are very predictable.
Yeah. And I think a robot can predict those things, but I don't think a robot's similar, or an AI is similar in that manner. It's not adaptable in that same way. It tries to adapt its environment to it versus we adapt to our environment, I guess.
Yeah, I think the main reason why I think in a fight, I'm thinking from a military point of view, they're very predictable because they're trained, and you fight to a set of rules. And or that those rules that are trained into you. So that's why the soldiers are incredibly predictable. If you understand the training of different, the French fight completely different to the Germans and completely different to the Americans. And if you understand their basic training principles, they're very, very predictable. Mm-hmm. Which is why we're the best at it, because we actually train to not be predictable. So we are the best. Not fighting.
Yeah, it's like, how many decades did the United States train jihadis in the Middle East to fight, just like us? And then all of a sudden we go to Iraq, and guess what? They're fighting like us.
Well, you went over and taught them guerrilla warfare.
Oh yeah,
we taught you.
Yeah,
we fought in Northern Ireland. We learned the hard way about fighting terror and fighting guerrilla warfare.
I'm pretty sure we showed the Brits a little bit about guerrilla warfare back in.
I mean, if you want to talk about guerrilla warfare, I mean, let's look at the 1700s in the Appalachian Mountains. Somebody got their asses kicked.
We taught y'all guerrilla warfare. Excuse me.
We've never lost a war ever.
There's a reason this country exists.
We were fighting Napoleon, and we let you get away with it. We beat you twice, and we kept having to pull back because Napoleon. And we were fighting other wars, so we were just like, leave them to it.
So those are adaptable excuses to losing a war?
We didn't lose.
I think there's an entire continent on this side of the world that would argue otherwise.
Bravely left you to it.
Oh, no, that's what it is.
We have never lost. There is an Al Murray thing, and he talks about this and says we've never lost a war ever. But actually, genuinely speaking, I don't think we ever have. But there was something like we've been at war at one point. Britain has been at war at one point or another with every country on the planet that existed at the turn of the century. So there's there's a few new countries, but basically we've been at war with every planet on the country at one point or another. Every country, and I'm just like, come on, Britain. We are aggressive. I tell you what, we go abroad and you get a few jars in us. We get fighty.
Yeah, the only three wars that Google says the British have ever lost are the American Revolutionary War, the Napoleonic Wars, and then the Boer War.
How did we lose the Napoleonic Wars? We put him in prison twice.
And he kept kicking.
How did we lose the Boer Wars? We controlled it for 200 years following it, and we didn't lose the War of Independence. We just didn't care enough.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what the French would say, at the Battle of Yorktown. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just didn't care enough. We were just like, I'll just let them have it. They want it. Let's let them have it. Fucking hell.
That's what
How did we lose the Napoleonic Wars? I mean,
I don't know. That's what Google said. I don't know whether they're going too deep.
Do we or do we not speak French? No, we don't. We won the war. And then we controlled Calais for 100 years after it. We still control Calais now, really. No. Anyway.
The military side.
We didn't lose the Boer War either. We might have lost the conflict, but Rorke's Drift didn't go as planned. All right, but other than that, it went very well. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for that. We've had a lovely argument that I won, and I look forward to many more.
That's what the AI thought about that.
No, yeah, and like we said, I think like that this is an argument that we've had whenever new technology comes along, and it's when AI is replaced by something else, we'll argue about it then as well. The chances
Hey, if
are.
I could just quickly mention the proper titles of those two books I spoke about earlier. The first one was Story, Style, Structure, Substance, and the Principles of Screenwriting by Robert McKee. That's the one that's required reading for new Pixar writers. The other one is a little bit older. It's Poetics by Aristotle. That was like the first attempt of man to like quantify storytelling or how to tell a story. And both of those are really good reads.
Yep. And that's all. Just give that to AI, and then the rest of Hollywood can go home because that's done. Anyway, thank you so much, guys. That was absolutely brilliant. And for the Americans in the room and on the chat, I'm joking. Britain is better than everybody else on the planet, but only because of like Shakespeare and stuff, not because of fighting. Even though we are better at fighting. That's not a very good apology, but there's one.
Rescuing.
I'm joking. Calm down. Don't get into the comments. I'm joking. Right. But guys, thank you so much. Go and have breakfast, Stormy.
I will.
Whoever's doing ChatGPT in there is in the comment section is excellent. It just keep cracking me up.
But no, that was a fascinating
Boston
conversation.
tea bags in the Boston Harbor.
Yeah.
That's just.
I'm going to be generous and actually say that I was only 75% right, and that you made some good points. There you go. So that's how we'll end the conversation. But everybody have a brilliant day, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you next week.
Oh yeah.
I'm on my phone, so can somebody else end the stream for me, please?
Yep.
Matt, you're up. You're up to bat.
See you later.
The book. I can't get it. Bye.